Good morning, fight fans. Welcome to the Tuesday, July 16th edition of the MMAOB Daily Show. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. First and foremost, guys, follow me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Please like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel at MMAOddsbreaker. Also, check me out at showdog.com, bjpen.com, MMAnews.com, and MMAratings.net. Pretty packed show today. I got a couple of fight announcements to talk about. Also, Bellator announced the full field for its Featherweight Grand Prix, which is really interesting to talk about, actually. And the Contender Series takes place tonight. So I'm going to start with the Contender Series. We'll just go through the fights quickly here. There are odds out right now. You can check them out on bestfightodds.com. MMAOddsbreaker.com. I have sent in my opening odds article. That should come out today. I was hoping it would come out last night, but it should come out this morning. So I'll go right through the fights right now. Just pull that out here. Dana White's Contender Series. Looks like a decent card, honestly. Not as many, I would say, mismatches as maybe some of the cards earlier in the season. Maybe one or two according to the odds, but there's definitely some close fights here. Let's see. Contender Series week 4. Yeah, it should be a pretty good card. Okay, let's go right through it. All right, I'll go from the main event. My work way down. First off, middleweight bout in the main event between Stephen Regman and Antonio Arroyo. Currently, I'll just do the current odds. Arroyo's minus 135, Regman's plus 115. So definitely an interesting fight here, a close one to call. I would say one of the closer fights in the card. Arroyo, 30 years old, fighting in Brazil. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He was on the Brazilian version of the Contender Series last year, won a fight, hasn't fought since last August. He actually had a fight against Wellington Turman canceled recently. That was a guy that was supposed to be, or is in the UFC now, fought Carl Robertson on the weekend. So that would have been a good fight for him. If he got that win, he would have been in the UFC for sure. But either way, I definitely think this guy's pretty good for what I've seen. He's got some ability to finish the fight, either standing or on the ground, which is good. And then you have Regman here, 27 years old. He's on a 4-fight win streak too. He's fought for LFA, Ring of Combat, CFFC, East Coast guy, of course. He fought some decent competition. Daryl Horcher. In his last fight, Will Santiago, that's a guy that was on the Contender Series. So definitely a close fight here. I'm kind of leaning towards Regman, to be completely honest. I think his level of competition has been a little bit higher, and he's got more big show experience than Arroyo does, besides his fight on the Contender Series. So I'm leaning a little bit towards Regman, but definitely a close fight, and the odds are very competitive for a reason. This fight could probably go either way. So be cautious about this one, but I am kind of leaning towards the dog in this fight. Next up, Armando Villarreal versus Ode Osborne. This is a bantamweight bout. Villarreal, 5-1 record. He's 29 years old. He's won 3 straight fights, fighting in LFA. And then Osborne, his opponent, 7-2 record. He's won 3 straight fights as well, fighting kind of on smaller shows. He's also fought in RFA earlier in his career, so some experience, and NAFC, which is a decent promotion as well. So he has some experience, actually, in decent-sized shows, I guess. But Villarreal, he is a favorite in this fight. He's minus 185. Osborne's plus 160. So the odds makers are favoring Villarreal. I am too. I think he wins this fight. Bantamweight bout. So probably no finisher. If I had to guess, probably goes the distance. But I would pick Villarreal to win a decision in this fight. And in the main event, actually, I do think there's going to be a finish between Regman and Arroyo. So the fight doesn't go the distance in that fight, minus 265. I think that maybe if you want to do parlay, maybe that could be something to consider, because I don't see that fight going the distance. Both those guys finish fights. That's in the main event. In this fight, the odds on this fight, yeah, going the distance, minus 165. So the odds makers agree with me that it's probably going to go the full 3 rounds, and I'm not surprised there. Next up, heavyweight bout. This is a good one too. Dontel Mays against Ricardo Presale. Dontel Mays, well, the odds actually, I should say quickly. Dontel Mays currently minus 175, Presale plus 155. I might be pronouncing his name incorrectly, but we'll see tonight. Mays, 6-2, 27 years old. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He actually was on the Contender Series twice. He was on the first season. He lost to Alan Crowder, which looking back is a really bad loss. And then he was on last season's Contender Series, beat Mitchell Seep by TKO. So he's won 3 straight fights. I think he's a pretty good heavyweight prospect. And then he's taking on Presale, 10-1 record, 29 years old. He's undefeated besides one fight. He's lost once in his career, lost in Rising last year. Since then, he's picked up a TKO win. So heavyweight bout, heavyweight division needs prospects. I think the winner of this fight, especially if there's a finish, there's a good chance they get signed to the UFC. I'm going to pick Mays in this fight. I think that the experience being on 2 seasons already of the Contender Series has helped him. He hasn't lost since that Alen Crowder fight. He also beat Muhammad Usman, who is a notable fighter, of course, because of his last name. But yeah, I like Mays here. I think he wins by knockout. Well, we'll see what happens because Pressel hasn't been knocked out before, so we'll see if he can catch him. But I think he does because Mays usually does tend to finish his fights, and I think he does get the knockout in this one, and it should be an interesting fight. And the prop on that, yeah, the prop of the fight doesn't go in the distance. Mine it's 305, so don't see any value really on that prop, to be honest with you, because mine's 305. But yeah, I would say that this fight does end inside the distance. Next up, featherweight bout between Kevin Siler and Lance Lawrence. Kevin Siler currently minus 300, Lance Lawrence plus 250. The odds actually opened a little bit closer, so the Siler's been steamed up here, and I can't really blame people for betting on this guy. 8-0 record, fighting out of Bolivia, 25 years old. He's an American top team guy. 8-0 record. He hasn't lost yet. Made his pro debut in 2014, and since then it's been perfect. And, he hasn't fought like super high level competition, but definitely better than what Lawrence has fought. Lance Lawrence here, 5-0 record. His last opponent actually had a decent record, but other than that, he was fighting really low end guys. He did fight that Jonathan Pierce guy who just fought in the Contender Series, so that's kind of something to probably keep in mind. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of lean towards Siler in this fight. Again, I just think the competition's been a little bit higher for him, and he does have more experience as well. So I would take Siler to win this fight. And what are the props here? Yeah, well, I mean, it looks like he finishes most of his fights, but this one could go the distance as well. I'm not too sure. Both these guys do finish fights, so maybe it does end inside the distance. We'll see. I'm sure Dana White would love that, but it looks like most of these props are favoring the fights to end inside the distance. I don't know, because last week we saw all those finishes, but the week before, don't forget, a lot of decisions. So who knows? You put these guys under the bright lights of the UFC Apex, who knows how they perform compared to what they were doing on the regional scene. So be careful if you're just going to blindly parlay those props. And last but not least here, a middleweight bout between Brendan Allen and Aaron Jeffrey. This is a pretty good fight, actually. And again, the winner of this fight could very well be signed. Currently, Allen's a big favorite, minus 485, biggest favorite on the card. And Jeffrey's plus 325. So no surprise here, really. Brendan Allen, 11-3 record, 23 years old, young guy, Rufus Sport product on a 3-fight win streak. Fighting in LFA, he was the middleweight champion there. He has fought some pretty good competition in his career, including Eric Anders, who he lost the decision to in 2016, and also Anthony Hernandez, who, of course, is in the UFC now as well. So he's fought a pretty good level of competition. Also, Trevin Giles, he lost to him, but again, another guy in the UFC. And Aaron Jeffrey here, 6-1 record, 26 years old. He's actually fighting on a Parabellum in Ontario, right near me. So this guy's kind of a local Ontario guy, which is pretty cool to see. He actually just fought on the local Ontario card here called was it BTC Fights. That was the same card Kyle Prepelec beat Cody Fister on. He got the sign to the UFC. So and a couple other guys that I know on this card, like Woodrow James. I used to know him pretty well from just the MMA scene in Ontario. So pretty cool that this guy's getting a shot in the Contender Series, because you don't see too many Canadians on the show. And he actually has fought some decent size shows like King of the Cage, CFFC, NFA, NAAFS, Gladiators of the Cage. So he's fought some decent shows. But I like Brendan Allen, man, just the experience. And he's a champion at LFA. He knows what to do here. This is a good matchup for Brendan Allen to, I think, look good. Even though Jeffrey hasn't lost yet by stoppage, Brendan Allen is a guy that can finish fights. And he's a guy, like I said, with a ton of experience. And if he wins this fight in an impressive fashion, he's 100% getting signed to the UFC. He probably should already be in the UFC, but we'll see what happens in this fight. I do like Brendan Allen, though. And again, the odds are crazy, but he should win this fight. And I would assume that people are going to parlay him, because I don't see really the argument here for Jeffrey, just based on what I'm seeing. But should be a good card either way. I mean, the Contender Series, it's always a good card. And we're always in for a couple upsets, too. I mean, it seems like there's always at least one upset on each card. So who knows what that's going to be tonight. I tend to lean toward the Bregman if I had to pick a dog, but definitely interesting to see this card play out tonight. I'm looking forward to this one. Last episode was amazing. It really made up for that episode before, where Dana White was really pissed off because no one was finishing the fights. But yeah, this should be a good one. And by the way, there's an interview with Dana with Barstool, and it was pretty cool. They went through his office and the UFC headquarters. I thought that was pretty cool. So definitely check that out if you want to see more about where Dana White works and just not really the apex where they build for the fights, but just the offices in general and the war room with all the matchmaking and stuff is pretty cool. So definitely check that out. I definitely recommend looking at that interview. All right, so let's get into the Bellator Featherweight Grand Prix. They've announced the first round matchups. I did mention the one fight between Patricio Pitbull and Juan Archuleta last week. I really like that fight. It's for the title, actually, of course, because it's Pitbull's the champion. It's in the tournament. Therefore, it has to be a title fight. It should be a really good one. I'm a little surprised, though. If you look at the other matchups, it's kind of weird they would kind of burn off Archuleta or Pitbull so early in the tournament. Both guys are so good, and I feel like they could easily have met in the finals, but someone's going to lose that fight. So that's kind of interesting because you look at some of the other matchups and you're like, whoa, like these guys, they would get smashed by either Archuleta or Pitbull. So anyways, let's just go through them. Derek Campos takes on Daniel Strauss. Definitely a good fight here. Daniel Strauss, former champion, and Campos, always tough guy. So that should be a good one. Pedro Carvalho is taking on Sam Sicilia, former UFC veteran there. Taiwan Claxton against Emmanuel Sanchez. I think you have to favor Sanchez there. He's one of the most underrated guys, I think, in Bellator. And here's a fight that I really like. Adam Borix versus Pat Curran. Like, this would have been a good fight, I think, either way. Borix coming off that huge knockout win over Eric Pico, and then Pat Curran, obviously a former champion, longtime Bellator veteran. I like this matchup a lot, and I would have put this on the card either way. So it's pretty cool that's in the tournament. I mean, I think you have to go with Borix for that fight, though, just based on how Curran's look like. And Borix coming off that huge win over Aaron Pico, who I should mention is not in this tournament. And Scott Coker was on Ariel's show yesterday talking about why that decision was made. And I completely agree with him. I mean, Aaron Pico is not, first off, he doesn't deserve to be in this tournament. And second off, he shouldn't be, because he should be resting himself, healing up. He's a young guy. He's been knocked out a couple times on brutal fashion. I hope that he can take some time to mend. He'll be back one day, but right now, Aaron Pico needs to fight some low-level guys and not be part of this tournament, because I don't think it would go very well for him, considering some of the heavy hitters in this tournament. All right, so those fights that I just mentioned will take place on Bellator 226. That's on September 7th in San Jose. And the other fights will take place September 28th at the Forum in Inglewood. And these fights include, like I said, Pitbull versus Archuleta, which I've talked about already. Saul Rogers versus Daniel Weichel, another guy who's a longtime veteran of Bellator. Here's a fight that I like. Georgi Karakian. I can't even pronounce his name right now. Georgi Karakian against AJ McKee. So, of course, the insane one, longtime veteran of the sport, and really respected veteran, I think. And then AJ McKee, Bellator's best prospect. And, someone asked me who I think the best prospect is in MMA right now. I think AJ McKee might be that guy. That's what I said. So, he's still a young guy. He's actually 14-0 in his career, including all his fights taking place in Bellator. Crazy, man. I mean, yeah, he's been getting favorable matchups for the most part, but like, this is not an easy fight. I do think he wins, though. I like AJ McKee here, and I think he could actually make it to the finals in this tournament. I think this tournament, the way the bracket's set up, it actually favors McKee to go, maybe not to the finals, but at least to the semifinals. I think, anyways, because I really like this kid, and I think he's got a bright future. And then the last fight to mention is Darian Caldwell against Henry Corrales, and to me, Henry Corrales wins this fight. The guy's been such a stud. He's looked so good lately. And Darian Caldwell, good for him for stepping up to a higher weight class, but I don't think he deserves a spot. There must have been someone else they could have put in here. The guy's lost to Yoji Horiguchi twice. You think they would have told him, hey, just stay at 135 and work on your game there? I don't know. Like, I understand, again, he was a former champ. He wanted to move up, but there had to be someone else, I think, instead of Darian Caldwell. He's a name, and of course there was Pico, but Pico wasn't the guy. I think there could have been someone else, though. There should have been, in my opinion. But anyways, it should be a good card. I like both the fights, and we'll see what happens. I definitely like the matchups, though. I think for the most part they're pretty good, and both those cards are pretty solid. I should mention that the one card, Bellator 226, that's headlined by Chia Kongo versus Ryan Bader, so that's pretty cool. And then Bellator 228 has Machida versus Musasi 2 on the card. It's not the main event, it's co-main. The main event is Archuleta versus Pitbull for the title. So definitely some good fights here. And I've heard some rumors about light heavyweight tournament as well. So we'll wait and see what the matchups are for that. But definitely there's a chance of light heavyweight tournament next year. So Bellator doesn't have the strongest field like us for 205, but they have a decent field, and we'll see what happens there when they do that tournament. Also, before I get into the fight announcements, I wanted to mention Scott Coker was talking about Fedor, and he said that he wants Fedor to come back and fight in Japan in the New Year's Eve card. potentially. And he mentioned two guys as opponents, Rampage Jackson and Josh Barnett. And I really like both those fights, to be honest. I think for Fedor, those are the perfect matchups. I mean, he's coming off that brutal knockout loss to Ryan Bader, but guys like Rampage and Barnett, I think Fedor can compete against those guys. They're older guys as well, former Pride guys. I think those fights make sense. So I would like to see either of those matchups, to be honest with you. Barnett or Rampage versus Fedor will both be good fights in my opinion. So I like the way Bellator is thinking here, and that whatever Japanese card, whenever it takes place, should be really fun because I think there's some real good crossover potential here between Bellator and Rising, and I like the fact that their fighters are able to shuffle between the two promotions. I think that's really cool, especially a guy like Horiguchi who, he's such an amazing fighter. It's nice that he's able to go to the States and fight and get some more notoriety. All right, let's get into the fight announcements now. My buddy there at BJPen.com, Chris Taylor, broke a huge fight yesterday. Ryan Ortega is fighting the Korean Zombie at UFC Mexico City. That's September 21st. Great fight. Love this matchup. Should mention the UFC is not completely or officially announced the matchup, but Chris Taylor is great, man. Chris has broke so many fights in the past. Yeah, BJ Penn, maybe compared to like junkier fighting, it doesn't get that recognition, I guess, as someone who breaks news. But Chris and Tom have broke so many fights at BJPen.com, and I'm proud to be part of that team, man. It's a great team. Love working for those guys. It's a great website. It's a much different website than it was in the past days with all the controversy years ago. BJPen.com is a great website now, and we, are the team. I should say we, because I'm part of it. But we've broken some big fights, and this is one of them. So I'm really looking forward to this fight, and I expect the UFC to make this official soon. And if I had to guess, it'd be the main event, and I think it makes more sense as the main event. Also, it's kind of funny though, right? Like that Ortega versus Magomed Sharapov fight never happened. That was rumored there. I think Nolan King broke the rumor for that fight, and Nolan's really good at fight announcements, but you can't get them all right, I guess. I don't know what happened to that matchup, but hopefully we see Magomed Sharapov get announced for a fight soon, maybe against Yair Rodriguez. I don't know. I would hope that Yair fights in this card as well in Mexico. Anyways, getting to this matchup, Ortega versus Jung. I mean, great fight here. Brian Ortega, 14-1 and 1 no contest record. He has a 6-1 and 1 no contest record in the UFC. Coming off a TKO loss to Max Holloway, but before that, of course, had beaten guys like Frankie Edgar by knockout, Cub Swanson by submission, Renato Moicano by submission, Clay Guida by knockout. He never goes the distance. Like, all his fights are exciting. They all end inside the distance. Guy's an amazing fighter, 28 years old. He is coming off a very one-sided loss, I would say, to Holloway, but he's taken the appropriate, I think, amount of time off, 9 months. That's a long time. That's a good amount of time, I think, coming off a fight like that. So I think he should be good to go here. And then he takes on Korean Zombie Chen Jung, who, of course, is coming off a huge knockout win over Renato Moicano just a couple weeks ago. He is 5-2 overall in the UFC. All of his wins by stoppage as well. Both these guys don't go the distance. Like, their fights end inside the distance. I don't see this fight going the full 5 rounds. Someone's going to get finished in this fight. I don't know who, though. It's hard to say. I mean, Zombie has that, I think, striking advantage in this fight, and he's looked so good with his power. But Brian Ortega also has good knockout power, and he also has an incredible ground game. So just a fantastic fight. I really like the matchup here. If I had to lean towards someone initially, I think I'd lean towards Ortega just because that ground game is just so ridiculous. But, Jung is so good at times too. Tough fight to call. I'm curious to see what the odds are, but I love this matchup, and good job on Chris for breaking the news on that one because, man, what a fight that's going to be. Let's see what else we got here. A couple fight announcements. UFC Copenhagen's got a couple fights announced for it. Let's see here. First one, Alessio Di Chirico against Peter Sobotta. So let's just go check these guys out right now. Alessio Di Chirico, 12-3 record. He is 3-3 in the UFC, coming off a decision loss against Kevin Holland at the Korean Zombie Moicano card. Close fight. Most people thought he won that fight. If he did, he would have been on a 3-fight win streak. So he easily could be on a 3-fight win streak right now, taking on Peter Sobotta. Peter Sobotta, 32 years old, coming off a TKO loss to Leon Edwards. It was over a year ago, so he hasn't fought in a while. In his most recent stint in the UFC, he's 4-2, but he also was in the UFC back in 2009, 2010, and lost 3 straight fights. So overall, he is 3-5 in the UFC. So a losing record for Peter Sobotta in the UFC. I think he's a pretty good fighter, though. He's got a really good ground game, but it's hard to trust a guy that's lost that much in the UFC. So I'd lean towards Chirico here in this fight, but definitely an interesting matchup. And that's the same card, by the way, that's headlined by Jack Hermanson versus Jared Cannonier. Also on that card, we have a couple other matchups here. Ovince St. Preux comes back to take on Michael Oleksiejczuk. Ovince St. Preux, 23-13 record, including a 11-8 record in the octagon, coming off back-to-back losses against Nikita Krylov and Dominic Reyes. The Krylov loss, I think, was very disappointing for OSP. I mean, I thought he'd win that fight, to be honest. I love Krylov. Don't get me wrong. I actually picked Krylov the first time they fought, but considering the way the first fight went, I was kind of surprised that Krylov ended up dominating OSP for the most part in the last fight. Now he takes on Oleksiejczuk. He's 24 years old. He's fighting out of Poland, 14-2 and 1-0 contest record. He's on a 2-fight win streak in the UFC. It'd be 3 if the fight against Khalil Rountree wasn't overturned due to PEDs, but that was so 2-0 and no contest in the UFC. Back-to-back knockout wins over Gadzhimurov and Tigulov and John Vellante in his last 2 fights. He actually hasn't lost a fight since 2014. He's on I think a 10-fight winning streak, or I should say an unbeaten streak. The guy's a stud, man. He really is a good fighter, and I definitely like Oleksiejczuk in this fight. He's going to win this fight. So give me Oleksiejczuk all day, and I'm curious to see what the odds are. Hopefully they're reasonable. They have been for this guy recently. He should be a bigger favorite than he has been in his last couple of fights, because I think people are finally starting to see how much potential this guy has, but I really like him. He's got good knockout power and just a really good young fighter, and OSP is a good guy to fade here, I think. 36 years old now. He's really looked just terrible lately, so I like Oleksiejczuk quite a bit. And the last fight announced for this card, Alen Amedovski versus John Phillips. Let's just check these guys out. Alen Amedovski, he fought Krzysztof Jotko in his UFC debut. Yep. Before that, had won all of his fights, most of them by knockout, actually all of them by knockout. So lost the decision there and showed kind of a poor ground game and poor grappling skills. So that's disappointing. Takes on John Phillips here. John Phillips, pulling his record out. He's coming off a really controversial decision loss to one sec. That's the wrong John Phillips. This is the right one. He's coming off a really controversial loss to Jack Mershman by split decision. He should have won that fight. And before that, he had lost 2 straight fights to Kevin Hall and Charles Bird. So I think UFC's doing him a favor here, kind of. They're giving him another chance because, let's be honest, he got robbed in that last fight by the judges. But he's got to win this fight, of course, to stay in the UFC. The guy's got a ton of knockout power, but other than that, what does he have? I don't know. This one could go either way. I maybe Amedovski, just because I think that now he's got that UFC debut out of the way, that should help him here. But who knows? I mean, especially because Phillips has way more experience than him, so this fight could go either way. Don't really have a solid pick here, and who knows if these guys even last till the card. That card's in September, late September, so we'll see what happens. I'm sure the UFC is going to keep announcing fights for that. They've been announcing fights like crazy, so fight announcements are always coming up by the UFC, and those cards are getting really busy. And also, I should talk about the schedule now. It's so busy, guys. Like, if you look at the ahead, there's like no weeks off. August 24th, there's no UFC, but there is a Bellator card that week. So there's no Saturdays off right now. October 18th, that's the Boston card. That's on a Friday night. The Saturday then is off. I'm assuming there'll be something else that week, and I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, if you're an MMA fan, a UFC fan, prepare your calendars, guys. You're going to be watching a lot of fights on Saturday nights. So that's all good. We all love watching fights. So I'm just letting you guys know that the calendar is crazy. And there's also that card in China that's in the middle of the night. So that's not ideal, but it is what it is. And that's the Andrade Chang card. So get your popcorn ready, guys. There's a lot of fights coming up. All right, I think that's all I want to talk about today. I appreciate you guys tuning in as always, and I appreciate the comments for yesterday's show. I did watch, someone left a comment about the Elkins Hall fight, and I agree 100% with you. I actually had to skip through some of the prelims, and I didn't give Ryan Hall his fair shake in that fight. He actually did look a lot more improved on the feet. I'm still not convinced he's a top 15 guy. I think he is ranked now because he beat Elkins, but I'm still not convinced because for me, he's still a one-trick pony. He did show improved striking, but Darren Elkins is kind of a stationary target. Doesn't really move around a lot. We'll see what happens if you fight. If you fight someone like Michael Johnson, I think Michael Johnson just picks him apart in the feet. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that because I appreciate the comments, guys, and I appreciate the viewers. Thank you so much, guys, for checking out the show. The numbers are growing. Of course, it's still a new show. I've only been doing this for like not even 2 months now, so I've really been enjoying it, and I appreciate all the feedback, positive or negative. Thank you, guys, for checking out the show, and I'm here every day, Monday to Friday. So before I get out of here, I want to mention myself and Cole Sheldon will be back at 11 a.m. We'll be doing our full UFC San Antonio breakdown. I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be the case, but I think we're going to start targeting Tuesday morning for our breakdown podcast, it might work out a little bit better for both of us. So I'll let you guys know for sure, but it's looking that way right now. But definitely today we'll be doing that because I'm busy tomorrow morning. So I'll do the regular podcast, but I won't have time to do the full breakdown tomorrow. So I'll do it today at 11 a.m. So 11 a.m. Eastern, I should say. So definitely check that out. That's in about 45 minutes from now. I'm going to get some breakfast. I'll come back and I'll talk about those fights with Cole. Before I get out of here, guys, of course, I want to plug my stuff. On Twitter, follow me at MMAOB. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com and on our YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate that, guys. Check me out at bjpen.com, sherdog.com, MMAnews.com, and MMAratings.net. I always have tons of content coming out, so definitely check all that stuff out, guys. I appreciate it. I'll be back in a little bit to break down UFC San Antonio, but until then, I appreciate you guys checking out the show, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great morning, and I'll see you guys very shortly.